Are retractable leashes dangerous or just misunderstood? Today's topic is the pros and cons of the Flexi lead. And I'm going to share with you my top tip for making them safer and more comfortable tool to use. Flexi lead. Are retractable leashes dangerous or just misunderstood? Today, we're talking about the Flexi lead, when to use it and when to avoid it. And my number one pro tip for making it safer and more comfortable for both you and your dog. So why does this information matter? I'm Sylvia as the founder of Walkabout Canine Consulting. I always say I'm actually the founder of Walkabout Canine Consulting, and I've spent over 35 years helping dogs and their people walk together more happily. And let's clear something up right away. Flexi leads are not evil, and you're not a bad dog guardian if you use one. So, in fact, millions of people, dog guardians around the world, use them every day. And unlike some tools, they don't cause fear or discomfort for our dogs, and that's a good thing. But like any piece of equipment, they work best when used the right way and in the right situations. So I'm going to share with you my experience as a professional. And let's clear something up right away. Flexi leads are not evil, and you're not a bad dog guardian if you use one. So, in fact, millions of people, dog guardians around the world, use them every day. And unlike some tools, they don't cause fear or discomfort for our dogs, and that's a good thing. But like any piece of equipment, they work best when used the right way and in the right situations. So I'm going to share with you my experience as a professional. I've used them for a very long time. I've used them to walk my dogs, clients' dogs, but I will say this, I do not necessarily recommend them for dog guardians to use to teach how to walk on a loose leash. You're better off actually teaching on a normal leash when you're going to do that. So I'll tell you a little story. I mean, like I say, I've used it for my own dogs. I've used it for when I've walked clients' dogs, and not necessarily for training, but getting them out when their owners are at work. And I always used a Flexi lead. I used to use the heavy duty, extremely long line. I used the heavy duty one because I was walking dogs that were bigger in size and weight, and the goal of our walks was not necessarily training per se. I may have added a little bit in there, but not the Flexi lead as a tool. What I did do is it allowed those dogs to have some happy freedom when we were walking on a sidewalk and there was a boulevard and trees. Now, it's not a tool that I'm going to use with a dog that walking on the road, because that can be dangerous unless I know the dog, and I feel quite comfortable using a Flexi lead. And the reason I do is because I do know how to use it very well. There are extra features on a Flexi lead that you won't see on a normal lead. But that's where we want to look at, some pros and cons when we're working with the Flexi lead. There's a retractable cord or tape. Some of them do have tape. I prefer the cord, but everybody has their own preferences. I do have a pretty one that has tape. and it has a stop and release button. It also has a lock. So I do have my favorite upgrade that I do myself. And that is this little piece of bungee, which you can, so it's essentially a bungee leash attachment for dogs. You can check online. You can check your local pet store and see if they carry them, or online stores definitely carry them. It's a great little add-on. You add this to the Flexi and this to your dog's harness. I do recommend when you're going to use a flexi lead to actually have your dog in a harness and then it's attached to the back of the harness. I don't recommend using a flexi lead on a flat collar that's on the neck. There are situations where you are putting a little bit of tension on the neck, maybe sometimes. And if there is a hard stop, you don't want the neck to be injured because there's so many things that can go wrong with hard stops on the neck. Dogs have their trachea there. You can do damage. There's all kinds of nerve endings. You can be placing pressure that in certain areas of your dog's body that is just isn't helpful. And there's a much bigger sting when there's a hard stop. So that's why I love using the bungee, but I do recommend if you are going to use a flexi lead that your dog does have a really sturdy harness with a front and back attachment. The back attachment is where you want to attach the flexi lead. So there's so many uses. There's so many uses, and just like any piece of equipment, we want to make sure that we know how to use it. Just like a flat collar, just like a harness, just like a martingale collar, we need to make sense of these. Or even different leashes. So the most important piece of equipment, the most important thing about this piece of equipment is, that it does have extra features than a normal leash. And you want to learn what they are, like I say, the stop button and the lock, and you want to be comfortable using that. You want to create a little bit of muscle memory, so practicing with the Flexi not attached to your dog will be really helpful. And then maybe practicing in the backyard with it attached to your dog so that you have some sense of, how the stop button works, how the lock button works. Um, so that can prevent maybe some issues from when you're actually walking. So, um, and when do I use a flexi lead for my dogs? I reach for a flexi when I want to give my dog more movement, but I can't have them on off leash. Excuse me, that might be like on a trail at the beach or an open park where there's open space and where a drag line, might not be acceptable and those can get dirty. They can get tangled in the bush. Sometimes can tangle around another person's ankle that we're walking with. So it's also just cleaner in bad weather. The long lines tend to get wet if they're cloth and dirty and wrap around ankles. And yes, flexi leads can wrap around your ankles as well. So that's where good handling is going to prevent that from happening at all. So, you know, when, you know, when do you want to avoid using a flexi? You want to avoid using a flexi if you've got a young puppy or a new dog that hasn't learned how to walk on a loose leash, because flexis don't teach the loose leash walking. If It could contribute and encourage more pulling if your dog is already pulling, so you want to be careful about that. I'm not going to use it for busy neighborhoods because I don't really want to give my dog that freedom of pulling out and going anywhere, especially, on roadways and such, or crowded areas. If you need your dog a lot closer to you. And honestly, if you are walking in those situations, it's going to be more dangerous if you don't know how to operate the Flexi. This is where, rope burns. So the cord does burn if it gets wrapped around, tangled around legs, or, the dog dashing into traffic. So a regular leash is much safer. Like I say, like I mentioned in my story, if I was walking on a sidewalk where there was a grassy boulevard, then that is a good option in residential areas as well. And like I said, I want to make sure my dog has some solid leash skills in lots of environments, not just one, because dogs do need to take that learning into different environments because that might be where I'm going to be using the Flexi. So if I'm using a leash on the street, and then I always use a Flexi at the park, and then maybe one day I want to use a regular leash at the park, then if I haven't done the loose leash walking training there, then our dog is going to go, well, wait a minute, I'm used to having freedom here. So they're very much going to predict what's going to happen. Dogs learn patterns fast. They are really great at predictable, happenings. And if freedom happens in certain places, they'll anticipate it. And then making those walks, you know, if our dogs know how to walk on a flexi, it can create a calmer and more enjoyable walk. So we don't want our dog also to learn that flexi means I can run all over the place. So that's not the goal. And that's where, it's nice to make sure that you can switch between using a flexi or a leash. So that is something that dogs do need to learn. And like I said before, the Flexi can be dangerous if you do not get acquainted with its use. And I think that's where we might see people in public using a Flexi that get into trouble. Sometimes even using, if we've got multi-dogs and we've got them all on Flexis, that can be an issue because now that's even a greater skill that you need to learn when you're using this. And then it can become dangerous. So, again, the Flexi lead allows for your dog to get some freedom and move more naturally. So, some of our dogs have a different gait. So, it is nice to actually give them the opportunity to move at what their natural gait is, discover surroundings. And at the same time, you've got them under control on longer, on the Flexi line. So you still have some control, and make sure that they are staying safe. So, what else was I going to say about um, yeah, so it enables you to have some really nice walks. And, the best thing is being able to walk our dogs in harmony. So, like I say, millions of dog owners use it all over the world, in many, many countries. So it can be a really great alternative when we want to give our dogs the opportunity to have more movement while at the same time not being off leash. So it is a safer alternative than a long line sometimes. And like I say, I am going to use that instead of a long line because it is safer. It won't get tangled. If my husband and I are walking, I don't have to worry about it getting tangled maybe around his ankles, depending on where, my dog is going. And so that's something that we want to think about. Um, so What we do want to be careful is because the flexi lead is a longer line than your regular leash, your dog can build up some speed. And that's where, we really want to teach our dogs some self-control on a flexi lead because we don't want them darting out and building up speed and running to the end of it. So there does take some training there too. And when there's a hard stop, that's why I don't recommend putting a flexi on a flat collar. And that's why I do recommend my bungee attachment. And then making sure that you have learned some safe handling and safety of using the retractable leash. So the bottom line is flexi leads can be fantastic secondary tools if you know how to use it and you pick the right setting. So it's all about the right tool for the right job at the right time. And if you found this helpful, give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, do you use a flexi lead and where does it work best for you? If you want to teach your dog the kind of leash skills that make walks more enjoyable, check out, I have a mini course on loose lead walking. It's a digital course and I'll link it in here in the description and I'll see you next time.
Nice.